Grandpa and I were out on the back porch, spending our evenings, as we often did, when I asked him about a weird story my parents had used to scare me as a kid. It was some kind of monster cat that would eat me if I was bad, I said, swirling my beer around thoughtfully as I tried to remember what it was called. I used to live in fear of it since Mom said it would eat me if I didn't finish my chores. It was the whooping cat? The whomping cat. The wampus cat, my grandpa said, draining his beer and launching it into the tree line like he often did. That's the one. I hadn't thought about it in years until last night. Dreamed that I was small again, wandering around your house looking for people. I never really saw him, but out of the corner of my eye, I could see this big, shadowy creature stalking me. It kind of reminded me of one of those guys in a mascot costume. Never got a good look at it, always hiding, but I remember being pretty scared as he followed me around the house. He made this kind of sound like a house cat, but loud, big, like a cat that's been startled or is about to fight. Suddenly, Grandpa loosed a cry like a scalded cat, and I heard all the animal noise around us taper off. He looked back and asked, "Sound like that?" I was speechless. Yeah, exactly like that, but how? I taught your mother how to recognize that call. Didn't want her to go through the same horrific experience I had. Experience what exactly? I asked, slightly confused. The wampus cat. I stared at him for a moment. The night birds starting to tune up again as Grandpa leered back and stared at the night sky. We were silent for a few minutes, the crickets loud as they put on the last concert before autumn put them to ground. Before Grandpa said, "I saw him once." My head was a little foggy and I murmured out, "Saw what?" "Wampus cat. I saw him once." My skepticism started to claw its way out, but ever since the tree incident, I had been a little more open to Grandpa's stories. Yeah? Do you mind telling me about it? Grandpa seemed to think about it for a few seconds before he began. I was about 5 or 6 when Cousin Luke came to stay for a few weeks. My mother's sister was going to stay with Luke's sister and help him deliver her first baby. She asked if Luke could stay for a while. Mama said he'd stay in the room with me, even though I said I didn't mind. I wasn't very excited about the prospect of Luke staying with us. Luke was not a good kid, you see. Luke was the baby in the family, 2 elder brothers, a sister. We were all out of the house. This had led him to be a little bit of a brat. He was always a bully. I knew I'd have to keep my eyes on my things if I didn't want them to go missing. I'd also have to make sure to spend as much time in the woods as I could when I wasn't at school. Otherwise, Luke would likely make excuses to play rough with me. I wasn't a fragile child. Luke was a few years older than me and had often left bruises after we played. So, Luke came over, bag packed for a week or more, and Aunt Cara thanked us for letting him stay. Despite her difficult son, Aunt Cara was an absolute delight. I hold her against her that I have to deal with Luke for a foreseeable future. She gave me a tight hug. She thanked me for taking Luke into my room, promising me something special when she came back. I thanked her. And I was thinking that the only gift I was looking forward to was the return of my room, the return of my quiet existence. I showed Luke to our room, showed him to the cot he'd be sleeping on, turned to find him putting his bag at the foot of my bed. When I asked him what he was doing, he just grinned like a fox, wagged a finger at me. Not very Christian of you to make a guest sleep on a saggy old cot. A real guest should be offered the bed while you sleep on the cot, don't you think? I argued with him. I wanted to, but I realized it wouldn't do any good. as I tried to get comfortable on the couch that night, listening to Luke snore lustily in my bed. It was going to be a long few weeks. However, after a week of having Luke there, I was good and ready to have him gone. In that time, he had managed to sprain my wrist after pushing me out of a tree, steal my favorite rock from my collection, though he claimed it hadn't been him, and break any number of small numbers of toys I owned. To my parents, he was an angel, always minding his manners around his mother, and especially around my strict father. He always appeared to help with chores, walked with me to school. He was polite while they were around. The second their backs were turned, he cut school, shirked chores, knocked these bumpkins to their backs. It was Sunday when their neighbor knocked at the door. I was working towards mid-afternoon, sun taking on that golden tint, you see, when it getting ready to set. When the knock came. Hard and frantic. When Dad went to go get it, he turned out to be Mrs. Douglas, our second closest neighbor. She had run nearly 6 miles to our house to help get Mr. Douglas to the hospital. They'd fallen off a ladder while fixing something, broken his leg. It was pretty bad. He managed to get him into the porch, but she didn't drive him there herself since they didn't own a car. This is the 1930s, so that wasn't uncommon. My parents agreed to go help her. Mama told us to stay here while she went to help Daddy, and telling us to tidy up while they were gone. I asked Mama if I can go with them, said that I wanted to help. I really just wanted to be not left alone with Luke. Mama smiled, ruffled my hair, thinking I was trying to avoid cleaning, told me that I had to stay here, watch the house while they were gone. Besides, you don't want the Wampus Cat to hear that you're shirking your responsibilities, right? And that sent a shiver up my spine. Much like you, I was pretty scared of the Wampus Cat. Not just because my mama talked about it, but because my grandma talked about it. And Grandma used to say that the Wampus Cat came to get little kids who disobeyed their parents, dragged them off into the woods, devoured them in the lair. He roamed the woods listening for misbehaving children, took care of them so their parents no longer had to be burdened with them. He had coal-black fur and coal-red eyes. He's tall as a man, wide as a bear, razor-sharp teeth that seemed too big for his mouth, claws like kitchen knives. You'll know him by his cry, a sound like a cat scalded by the stove and by the smell of fresh blood. Nothing will stop him from getting his prey. Nothing. And you don't want to be the focus of his ire. No. And Grandma told me to beware of something. I bewared it. So as the old truck rumbled out the front door, I set about the chores. There were dishes to wash, there were floors to sweep, there were counters to clean. There was washing to bring in as well. As I started wiping the counters, I heard Luke snort, continuing to throw the baseball he'd been playing with up into the air before catching it. Hadn't got up off the couch. He was sitting with his head near the ground and his feet in the back. Something Mama had asked him not to do. You still believe in that old cat? I looked up, confused by the question. Of course. Mama wouldn't lie about something like that. Don't you? No, I figured out a while ago that the Wampus Cat was made up. You ever seen a cat that big? It's all nonsense. No. I tried to rationalize this, the cleaning cloth still held in my hand. It couldn't be right. My mama had never lied to me. My grandma had certainly never lied to me. My mama might tease me sometimes, but she always told me it was a joke afterwards. My grandma, though, did not tell a joke about the strange things that might be found in the Appalachian. This would muddy the waters, might cause me to question something that would get me killed. As Luke played with his ball, I continued to clean and finish my chores. As I cleaned, I began to feel something watching me. It began to tickle on the back of my neck. The feeling that I wasn't quite alone. As I washed dishes, I could almost feel a presence looming just out of sight. Its hulking form, seen out of the corner of my eye, seemed to linger near the windows, its bulk sometimes blocking out the light. I felt my eyes creeping over to have a look. I remembered what my grandma had said and kept my eyes forward, away from the windows. If you ever feel something watching you, it's best to just ignore it. Some critters really don't like being seen, and seeing them could be the last thing you ever see. I finished the dishes as the sun began to sink towards the edge of the horizon. I could feel those eyes behind me. I could feel them boring me. Didn't want to look at whatever possessed those eyes. It seemed intent on me, showing no attention to my cousin in the living room. I had to finish cleaning. Mama would be mad if I didn't. I turned around, my legs wooden pegs beneath me, and felt my breath stick in my throat as I saw him. I only saw him for a second, but that was a second too long. He loomed in the window near the mudroom, his bulk making the setting sun appear muted. His fur was coal black, looking matted and tangled, as the burdock stood out against the glass. His eyes were living coals, simmer in his head as he stared at me. His claws tapped lightly against the window, long, yellow talons sprouted from the furry hands. His teeth were too big for his mouth. They poked out haphazardly from the heaving mouth that fogged up the glass with every breath. He moved away after a few seconds, pushing his bulk out of the windowsill. It still had been long enough to etch his image into my memory. I felt the hard wood of the cabinet as it ground into my back. Sat down on my backside, my eyes glued to the window as they bulged in fear. The window was empty, but I could still see the remains of his final gasping breath. I could see his face. If I closed my eyes, those claws would haunt my dreams for many nights to come. I was shaking as I watched the window, seeing his shadow as it slid across the porch, his weight making the boards groan and the slat. "What are you doing?" I looked over at Luke standing there with a questioning look spread across his face. I pointed shakingly towards the door, my voice refusing to come out. "Oh, what? Is the great Wampus cat waiting for me?" I nodded furiously, pointing at the window. Now Luke moved to the window and looked out from the porch, snorted at me, said he didn't see anything out there, moved to the door to open it, and I cried out, not making any intelligible sound, not wanting him to let it in. It sounded like a dog strangling on a bit of something, unable to draw in breath. He unlocked the door, he turned the handle, pulling on the door as if in slow motion. I screamed internally as the door swung open, my throat holding it all in till I felt like I might burst. He stepped out into the porch, looking around the door, before turning back and grinning at me. "Well, either he's great at hiding or he ain't here. Almost seems like he's made up. Told you there's no Wampus cat, nothing to punish naughty kids. Your mama lied, just like mine, and there is nothing that can do anything about." A shadow fell across him. My attention had been drawn away as he spoke, but snapped back as the large black silhouette behind him, as the doorway was engulfed. Luke still stood grinning in victory, but his smile dribbled off his face as he took notice of the shadow that fell across the floor. He turned his head ever so slightly. I don't think he ever saw the Wampus cat. The creature wrapped its thick, furry arms around him. lifting him up easily into that gaping maw of razor-sharp piano keys. Luke screamed as his head slid into the toothy mouth, and he went on screaming until the wampus cat crunched down and ended his life. He stared at me as he stood there, Luke's body hanging in his arms before he turned and took his grisly supper back into the sea of greens. He left me sitting there, shaking, shivering. I waited for my body to work again. I sat there speechless as my grandpa finished his story. The night sounds were all around us again. The birds and bugs turning up again. And Grandpa took a sip from his nearly forgotten beer. His throat had been getting rough towards the end, and the beer seemed to wet it like a dry valley in a rainstorm. He finished the beer in one long pull and launched the bottle into the woods where it shattered against a tree. So, what happened when they got home? And surely they didn't believe that a big cat came and ate your cousin. He stared into the dark, his face that of a child who's been scared into silence. He was quiet for so long that I thought he had fallen asleep. I snapped my fingers in front of his face a few times to see if he was dozing. He snapped awake after a few seconds of this, blinking and looking around as if the fear had slid away. Even so, it was several minutes before he finally spoke. Well, as is usual, my grandma came to save me. Not from the wampus cat. He only took naughty children. She came to save me from my terror. She came, she found me shaking like a leaf. Door still open, sun sinking low in the sky. Took me to her house, wrapped me in a quilt. Sat there for hours, my mind throbbing under the weight of all that fear. But every day you see the focus of your fear made flesh. I spent a few days at my grandmother's house, my mind trying to make sense of it all. My mother came in a panic after finding me and Luke missing. And when Grandma told me what happened, she tried to push her way to me immediately. Grandma held her back. Told her to be patient with me. He's been through a lot, Possum. Give him time, let him rest. Seeing the wampus cat live to tell the tale, not many can say that. I sat in that shaking stupor for quite some time before I was able to get control of myself again. Aunt Kara came to see Grandma, too. I heard her crying. She cried. She wailed as I shivered beneath my blankets. She never told. I never saw her again. She seemed to have lost her taste for the Appalachians. I went home. And I learned to live with the knowledge that there were things out there that could kill me. Things that played by their own rules. It's my first taste of the strangeness of my home. And I'll never forget it. Somewhere in the woods, a cat yowled. And I shuddered to my core. I knew it was nothing but a mountain bobcat, but it was still too close to the cry my mother had always made for my taste. I got up then, taking my own bottle to the garbage as I went back inside. Grandpa asked me where I was going before I walked inside. It took me a few seconds before I could answer him. I forgot to take out the garbage earlier. Don't want some damn cat thinking I'm shirking my house duties. My grandpa's laughter followed me into the house. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and thank you so much for watching tonight's video, or by listening to tonight's episode of the podcast, or by finding this in some other way that's not a podcast or a video, which I probably didn't upload, but hey, thank you for listening. And as always, I want to give a big thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. That includes everybody who's been waiting for me to update my Patreon, and I thank you all so much for being so patient with me. But especially, I want to give a thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Jakob Fenske, Stephanie Butler, Bobby Karman, Chance Burnett, Kraus, Tristain Pelton, AcidSystem, Adam Gerecke, Aeryn Stormcrow, Aika Limchoc, Amber Clark, Angelus, Atomaurus, Bastion Beefcake, Blue the Enigma, Brayden Morris, Broken Beast 320, Captain Scurvy, Caspian, ChellyJay, Corey Kenshin, Cronut 509, Crusader Chocobo, Cryptic Nightmares, Curse Pox Primarch, Dakota Lane Whetstone, Daniel Polson, Darth Myber, deleted account, Dirt Diver 030, M, Esteban, Fester's Lampshade, Freddy Krueger, Gorag Trimagazine, Grand Moth the Milky, Hades Nephew, Happy Birthday Jason Wilson, Harley, Himbo Jerry, Horseman Sect Time, Insanity Gamer X, Jay Cairns, Jesus Cornell, Jordan Humble, Justin LaFontaine, Kaylee Ambrose, Kiri the Sloth, Crazy Kid, Cryolinian, Lambda M98, Lisa Cottrell, Little Crow, Lord Life's Best, Lupita Galvin, Love You Eminem, Matt Bach, Melted Lake, Michael Allen Jr. Brashears, Mike, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Nate Cull, Nico Kaio, Psychomel, Red Shadowcat, Rob Like Sharp Things, Samahai, Sashi Suzaku, Seclude, Stricken, Tali Sue, Tater Chip, That Creepy Chick, The Ginger Bros, Turtle Man, Voice of Sand, William King, Xavier and Cheyenne, Yargul, and Zachary Graphius. If you would like to join this list of names that I horribly mispronounce, then please head over to patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta, or you can always check out the names in the description down below, or you can honestly support for even just $1, because it really helps me out when you guys do, and I appreciate it infinitely. So thank you all on Patreon, thank you all so much. Thank you for watching on YouTube and subscribing and liking videos and leaving comments about videos that you like, or leaving comments about why I haven't finished the 4th audiobook yet, or leaving comments about new stories that you've seen and you'd like to see on this channel. And to everyone, sweet dreams.